Again, nothing, it just confirms all of this crap you're talking about. They love her, you just come. I got it. I actually have two connections to Babson. One, obviously, is Phyllis, and that is an enormous source of insight and background, at least historically, about the school and the kinds of things that have gone on and the kinds of things that you're able to do by virtue of size and scale and the commitment of various people to the community that I'm going to talk about in some detail in the context of the 7 minutes that I've been allotted. So that's number one. The second is, for the last 12 years, I've continued to do one outside program. In fact, I was the largest outside customer of the Babson Executive Conference Center. At this point, consider access to the Mint malted milk balls as a critical asset. You can have all the flowers you want. As long as I get the Mint malted milk balls, we're just fine. But as we think about kind of the institution, it's absolutely fascinating as you go through the process of actually interviewing for a job. And the people who are interviewing you, all coming from different kinds of places, because you've got faculty and you've got staff and you've got trustees, and they've been spending some time together to try to get to some homogenization of insights about what it is they're looking for. And the more time they spend thinking about the institution and thinking about the nature of the leadership task that is before them, okay, the more hypercritical they become about the institution. And so I really as I went through the process and I started looking at the 13-page position spec that all of you have seen, and the need for a complete reconceptualization of strategy, and the need to be able to figure out how to compete in a global environment where everybody else has got graduate programs and undergraduate programs, and what are we going to do with the future of entrepreneurship, et cetera, and so forth. I said, wow, this is a really meaty strategic task. Okay? This should be kind of enormous fun. And then I got back into kind of the environment, kind of looking at it and thinking about it and meeting with people and visiting, and I came away with an extraordinarily different view of what goes on here from many of the documents that were involved in the search. And so let me at least give you some observations, and then having come through those observations, at least give you some sense of why I took the job when it was offered, aside from the fact that it was the only job that was offered. And secondly, what I actually think I'm going to do in the job. So first part, one is generally high-performing organizations are intensely self-critical, and this place is a reasonably high-performing organization, so it's reasonably intensely self-critical. But this place is enormously different from any other academic institution of its kind that I've ever seen in some very important ways. First of all, the faculty. The faculty at this institution has been absolutely willing to toss aside much of what passes for conventional wisdom in academia about content, about teaching, about the teaching and learning process in higher education. And most especially has overcome some of the forces of traditional academic disciplines in order to deliver an integrated and holistic educational experience at every level. At the executive level, at the graduate level, at the undergraduate level. I don't know anybody else who has done it anywhere near as well for anywhere near as long. Much of what passes for innovation, particularly in graduate education today, is stuff that's been going on at Babson for 15 years. And that's part of the great news, probably part of the problem too. But nonetheless, you have been doing it longer and better. It started here. And so, I mean, the faculty at this institution really is quite extraordinary. The student body. I've been in a bunch of different schools. I can honestly say I've never seen a student body quite like this. There is certainly not 1 ounce of ego deficit or bashfulness in the student body whatsoever. Okay? Emails started the minute there was an announcement resumes show up on the doorstep, opportunities for venture investments, invitations to parties. I mean, it's just great. And what makes it quite special from my own perspective is this is an enormously single-minded, focused campus. Okay? I mean, we focus on doing business, broadly defined. And you have a large and diverse population, okay, that's all focusing to some extent on the same thing. And it leads to an intensity and a seriousness of purpose that you just don't find on your traditional, average liberal arts campus. I mean, it's just a lot more exciting in so many different ways. And the students and the faculty together lead to some of the dimensions of the culture of this place, which is extraordinary again in blending theory and practice in the service of doing what, for lack of a better phrase, I call real work in the real world. Because that's what Babson's about. It's about helping people to learn to do real work in the real world. So you have some great teaching that's acknowledged by broad constituencies that go on here, and that teaching is delivered by classically trained academics who are doing their work differently than the way they were trained. And it's also being delivered by thoughtful and reflective practitioners who have built a large part of what this institution is all about. And we match them up with focused and determined students, and it's magic. I mean, it really is magic. And again, I might be jaundiced from the perspective of somebody who's just coming in a new leadership role, or I might even be practicing my first development speech. But the reality is, I believe it, okay? I believe faculty is very different than the faculty of other institutions. The students are very different, and the way they mesh together is very different, and they really are a magical formula. And then we get to staff. I mean, the amazing thing about the staff inside this institution is the ability to characterize their tenure. This is a long-lived staff. Right? And the consequent competence and ability to understand what's going on in this environment, as well as an extraordinary commitment to the work of the school, makes life a lot easier for a lot of people. So not only is it an extraordinary faculty and student body, but it's matched up with an extraordinary staff, and it creates an extraordinary culture. And so when the search committee was talking to me about, oh my God, all of these other people are looking at the space that we occupy and they have more resources than us, isn't our competitive position at risk? My argument pretty regularly was, that's not probably why it's at risk. Because the reality of it is, resources can't substitute for some of the cultural advantage that this institution has found. And that, in fact, resources at traditional academic institutions only fuel the silos that make it more difficult for them to do what they're trying to do. So you have some absolutely natural assets. You've consistently demonstrated your ability to innovate, to change, to evolve, to grow, and to develop over the years. And so one of the reasons I'm here, quite simply, is if you spend your time, you want to spend your time with someone and something and some group that's really winning and really special. And so I'm lucky enough to have that opportunity. And thank you all for that opportunity. Number two, if you're so good, why the hell you need a president? And there's some things that I think that I can bring to the community to advance what it already has going for it. One, an absolutely intense focus on helping this community to stay ahead of the pack in what we do and how we do it. In today's world, we've got to be much more focused, much faster, much more nimble. The game from a technology standpoint is being played in very different ways. The global playing field is being flattened. The MBA degree is in danger of being a productized commodity. Undergraduate degrees are changing in very fundamental ways. And what we need to continue to do as a community is do the kind of work that consistently has other institutions salivating about their systematic inability to match what we do. And so,